All right, welcome back. We're gonna take a deep dive into some pretty creative interpretations of 1 Peter 5:8.
Okay.
You know, that whole be sober-minded, be watchful. Your adversary, the devil, prowls around like a roaring lion, seeking someone to devour.
Right. Right.
You've probably preached on it,
Oh, yeah.
taught it, but how do you
Many times.
how do you keep it fresh? How do you keep it
How do you make it hit home?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
exactly
Especially like for pastors who are
Right.
doing this week after week.
week after week, year after year?
Year after year. Yeah.
I think that's what's so interesting is how many pastors are moving beyond
Yeah.
that typical lion imagery
Right.
and finding ways to make this verse really hit home for their congregations.
Yeah. Finding new ways to get people to really think about it.
Yeah.
You know, instead of it just being like, oh yeah, lion devil. You know.
Yeah, the same old, same old.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, we've got everything. We've got lion parks. Okay.
We've got corn nuts.
Lion parks and corn nuts in the same sentence. I'm intrigued.
We've got military strategy.
Okay, let's start with Hillsong Church.
Yeah.
I know they've got this really interesting idea of setbacks as setups.
Yeah.
Instead of just viewing tough times as,
Right.
something to endure,
Yeah.
they're looking at it as God strategically positioning you for a comeback.
It's not just about surviving the attack. It's about, like, God setting you up to win.
Right.
I mean, think about it. It totally flips the script, doesn't it?
Yeah, yeah. And what was so clever was the illustration they used.
Yeah.
The pastor was describing, like, watching a lion at a lion park.
Okay.
Fixate on the smallest person in the group.
Oh, wow.
Not the biggest, not the loudest, but the one who seemed most vulnerable.
Interesting.
It's such a visceral image.
Yeah.
And it makes you instantly connect to that feeling of being targeted.
You know, and for pastors listening, think about how powerful that kind of visual storytelling can be.
Absolutely.
You know, it's not just about explaining the concept.
Right.
It's about making your audience feel it. So instead of just telling them the devil targets the weak,
Right.
you show them. You know what I mean?
You show them.
You give them a picture. You help them.
That's so good.
Visualize it.
Yeah. So what's the takeaway here for our pastors? I think it's that it's not just that the devil exists, right?
Right.
And it wants to destroy us.
Right.
But he's actually being strategic about it.
He's picking his moments.
Yeah. And so knowing this, how can you as a pastor, how can you empower your congregation to recognize those moments?
Yeah.
To see those setbacks not as defeats, but as these divine setups.
Yeah, help them see those setbacks and opportunities as a chance for God to show up
Right.
in a powerful way.
Yeah.
You know, it's so good.
So good. Now let's shift gears a bit.
Okay.
We have Bridge Church,
Okay.
who took a more lighthearted approach.
Yeah.
They really focused on things that the devil hates.
Mm.
The pastor even joked about the devil hating corn nuts, of all things.
Or nuts.
I know. Corn nuts aside.
Okay.
I love that they're bringing in humor, right? It's unexpected. It makes you pay attention.
Right.
But on a deeper level, I think it highlights a really important truth.
Yeah.
The things that bring us closer to God.
Okay.
Prayer, worship, studying scripture.
Those are the things that repel the enemy.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Almost like a reverse psychology kind of tactic. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
It's like instead of focusing on what the devil wants us to do,
Right.
let's focus on what drives him crazy.
And that's where you can get really creative with your teaching.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Like, what are some uniquely, like,
Yeah.
your congregation things
Yeah.
that would just drive the devil nuts?
I love that.
You know?
It takes it from this general concept to something very
Right.
personal and actionable. Yeah.
That's good.
Okay, now let's talk about Church of the Harvest.
Okay.
They brought in a military analogy to 1 Peter 5:8,
All right.
talking about how a good soldier respects their enemy.
Okay.
Not because they admire them,
Right.
but because they need to understand their tactics.
You got to know your enemy
Yeah.
to beat your enemy.
Right. And what's interesting is they emphasized the Greek word used for devour
Oh, okay.
in that verse, which
Yeah.
implies total destruction.
Yeah.
So the stakes are high,
Yeah.
right? It's not just about resisting temptation here and there.
Right.
It's about understanding the enemy's desire to completely obliterate us.
Oh, wow. That's heavy.
And so for pastors, this raises a really crucial question.
Yeah.
How do you convey
Uh-huh.
that urgency
Yeah.
of this battle
Right.
without scaring the heck out of your congregation?
Right, right. Yeah, you don't want to freak people out.
You don't want to send everyone running.
Right, exactly. But it's also like you don't want to downplay it either.
Right. It's a delicate balance.
It is.
But I think phrasing it as a strategic battle where knowledge and preparedness are key can be really empowering.
Right.
It's not just about being afraid. It's about being informed and equipped.
Yeah, and having a plan.
Yeah.
A plan of attack.
Exactly.
You know, and this is where we start to see kind of a shift in how these churches are interpreting 1 Peter 5:8.
Okay.
It's not just about, like, external temptations or obvious sins. It's about recognizing the more subtle ways that the devil tries to undermine our faith, you know?
That's such an important point.
Yeah.
And a couple of churches really dove into this idea.
Yeah.
Waymark Church had a fascinating sermon focusing on the devil as the accuser.
Oh, interesting.
Drawing on Revelation 12:10.
Okay, yeah.
You know, that verse where Satan's called the accuser of the brethren.
Right, yeah.
They made this connection that the devil isn't just about brute force. He's a master of psychological warfare.
It's those insidious thoughts, you know?
Right.
The whispers of doubt and self-condemnation that can be so debilitating.
Oh, absolutely.
And for pastors, recognizing that this is crucial.
Right.
Because you're not just dealing with people's outward struggles.
Right.
You're dealing with these internal battles that can be
right.
even more destructive, you know?
Yeah, it's that voice that says, you're not good enough.
Right.
You'll never measure up. God could never love someone like you.
Exactly.
And if we're not careful, we can internalize those accusations and let them just cripple our faith.
Absolutely. And what stood out to me was how Waymark Church, like, tied this back to the experience of their congregation, you know?
Right.
Talking about how easy it is to get caught up in comparison.
Oh, yeah.
Especially in today's, like, social media-driven world.
It's so true.
You see everyone's highlight reels and you start to feel inadequate.
Absolutely. And I think that's such a powerful way to connect with people on a personal level, you know?
Yeah.
Instead of just talking about the devil as some abstract force.
Yeah.
You're showing them how these tactics actually play out.
Right, you're making it real for them.
In their everyday lives, yeah.
You're showing the practical implications of it.
Right.
That's good. Now, another church, the district church.
Okay.
They took this idea a step further.
Okay.
Their sermon focused on the devil's tactic of seeming unbelievable.
Oh, wow. So it's like he's winning by making himself seem like a joke?
Isn't that
both brilliant and terrifying?
It is, right.
At the same time.
It's wild. They even referenced Gallup polls showing a decline in belief in the devil.
Oh, yeah.
Especially among younger generations.
Right.
And it makes you wonder, like, if people don't believe he exists,
right,
they're certainly not going to be on guard against him, are they?
Exactly. And they also brought up C.S. Lewis's The Screwtape Letters.
Oh, yeah.
Where the senior demon Screwtape is advising his nephew Wormwood to make himself seem like a joke.
Right.
So that people would just drop their guard.
Yeah.
You know, it's almost as if that cartoonish image of the devil with the red suit and the pitchfork is actually playing right into his hands.
It's like he's become this harmless Halloween costume.
Yeah.
Instead of the dangerous adversary he actually is.
Right. And so this presents a challenge for pastors.
Yeah.
How do you talk about the devil in a way that's both compelling and believable without, you know, resorting to fear-mongering or outdated imagery?
Yeah, it's a tough one.
It is a tough one.
But I think, you know, highlighting the psychological aspects of spiritual warfare, like Waymark and the district church did, can be really effective.
Yeah.
It's about showing people how these seemingly small internal struggles can have huge consequences for their faith.
Absolutely. And speaking of those internal struggles, Risen Church had a beautiful perspective on how to kind of arm ourselves for this battle.
Okay.
They focused on the concept of humility as spiritual armor.
Humility. That's interesting. I don't think I've ever heard humility framed as a weapon before.
I know, right?
Yeah.
But it makes sense when you consider the context of 1 Peter 5:8.
Yeah.
You know, Peter was writing to Christians who were facing intense persecution.
Right, yeah.
So this wasn't just a theoretical threat, you know?
Right.
This was real life.
Yeah.
And they emphasized that humility isn't about weakness.
Yeah.
It's about aligning yourself with God's strength.
It's about recognizing that you can't do it on your own.
Right.
You need God's power.
Yeah, and they pointed out that Peter himself, he was known for his boldness, but also for his moments of pride and failure.
Yeah, he was human.
He was very human.
Yeah, you know?
Right, so it's not about pretending we're perfect or have it all together.
Yeah.
It's about acknowledging our limitations and recognizing that we need God's power to overcome.
Absolutely. It's that God opposes the proud but gives grace to the humble principle in action.
It is.
You know?
It is.
And for pastors, I think this offers a really powerful message for your congregation.
Yeah.
It's not about striving in your own strength.
Right.
It's about surrendering to God and letting him fight the battle for you.
Right. It's like that old saying,
yeah,
we are weak, but he is strong.
Yeah.
But it's not just a passive weakness. It's an active choice.
Right.
To rely on his power.
Right.
And this kind of ties in with that idea of setbacks as setups that Hillsong talked about, doesn't it?
Absolutely. When we face challenges, when we get knocked down,
yeah,
it's an opportunity to lean into God.
Right.
To draw on his strength.
Yeah.
And ultimately to come back even stronger.
Yeah, and it's in those moments of surrender, I think, when we admit our need for God, that the devil really loses his grip.
Absolutely. He wants us to believe we're on our own, that we have to fight this battle in our own strength.
Right, exactly.
And that's where he's wrong.
Right.
That's the lie.
And that brings us to another layer that Highest Praise Church highlighted.
Right.
They talked about this generational aspect of spiritual warfare. Generational spiritual warfare. That's kind of a heavy concept.
It is.
What exactly did they mean by that?
Well, they pointed out that, the devil doesn't just target us individually.
Okay.
He attacks families, communities, trying to disrupt faith across generations.
So it's not just about, protecting ourselves.
Right.
It's about equipping our children.
Right, and future generations.
And future generations to stand strong in their faith, too.
It's about understanding that the battles we fight today, they have ripple effects. The choices we make, the ways we respond to the enemy's attacks, they can impact, our children, our grandchildren, and beyond.
So as pastors, we have a responsibility here.
We do.
Not just to, preach about 1 Peter 5:8, but to equip our congregations to pass this wisdom on.
To teach their children about the reality of spiritual warfare.
Right, yeah.
To model resilience and reliance on God.
Absolutely. It's about fostering that culture of discipleship where faith is passed down from one generation to the next.
And this brings up another crucial point that several of these churches touched on.
Okay.
Community as a defense against the devil's attacks.
That's interesting. I hadn't really thought about that in connection with 1 Peter 5:8 before.
Yeah, it's not, explicitly stated in the verse itself.
Right.
But it's definitely implied,
Yeah.
Remember, Peter was writing to a community of believers who were facing persecution and hardship.
They needed each other.
They needed each other to stand strong.
It's like that image from Hillsong of the lion, targeting the most vulnerable person.
Right.
If you're alone, isolated,
yeah,
it's much easier to become prey.
Absolutely.
But if you're surrounded by your spiritual family, people who are praying for you,
supporting you, holding you accountable.
Yeah, you're less likely to fall prey to those schemes.
It's like, the devil might be prowling around looking for someone to isolate and devour.
Right.
But if we're connected, supporting each other, he has a much harder time.
It really does make a difference.
It does. And this is where the church as a community plays such a vital role.
Right.
It's not just a place to go on Sundays, Yeah. It's a support system, a refuge.
Right.
A place where we can fight this battle together.
And so as pastors, we need to cultivate that sense of community too.
Yes.
I encourage people to connect.
Yeah.
Share their struggles. Pray for one another.
And remind them that they are not alone.
Right.
That even when they feel weak or vulnerable, they have an army of brothers and sisters standing with them.
Oh, this has been such an eye-opening deep dive.
It has.
I thought I knew 1 Peter 5:8 pretty well.
Yeah.
But these different perspectives from all these churches
right.
have really challenged me to think about this verse in a whole new light.
It's amazing how one seemingly simple verse can contain so much depth, so many layers of meaning.
Yeah, and for those of you listening who are pastors or Bible study leaders, I hope this has sparked some ideas for you.
I hope so.
Don't be afraid to get creative.
Yeah.
To think outside the box.
Yeah.
To find ways to make this verse come alive for your congregations.
Because ultimately, the more we understand the enemy's tactics, the better equipped we'll be to resist his influence and live victoriously in our faith.
That's a message worth sharing.
Absolutely.
So until next time, stay vigilant, stay connected, and keep diving deep.